where we will begin is right after Naofumi, the shield hero, just lost, quote unquote, to Motoyasu and unlocked his burning hatred within him, unlocking the curse series, or well, the wrath that was within him. However, well, Raphtalia slaps Motoyasu and says that, well, she wanted to be with Naofumi from the beginning, and that is where this story is going to at least begin. They'll have the whole idea of Raphtalia and Naofumi going to get Philo, but before all that concludes and before they head off to the village of Lute, they'll have a special surprise. Naofumi gets called into the castle one more time. The king tells him that, well, he didn't give him the right amount of money and that Naofumi owes him some money back. Naofumi refuses this and refuses to let him take advantage of them. The king is about to say, well, some more things and, well, some outlandish things, but as this occurs, someone falls through the roof. Someone falls in and begins crashing in as Naofumi is scoffing at the king. Izuku Midoriya, hero named Deku, lands on the ground staring up at the king and backing up and looking at Naofumi. Now, who are you? Exactly, who are you intruding on us? Naofumi is, well, shocked by this, but can tell the boy is, well, an interesting person, and it looked like maybe he came from another world. It kind of reminded him of, well, one of the waves. It seems that the portal above him closed right when he fell through the hole, or created a hole in the roof of the castle, but luckily enough, he was able to slow his fall. But how was he able to even slow his fall? Naofumi doesn't know, but takes this time to leave. The king then decides to lock up Izuku Midoriya as he's, well, unconscious. Izuku begins to wake up and, well, some of the royal guards stand there and begin questioning him. Why are you here? Everything's a little fuzzy. Give me 1 second, please. Why am I here? I don't even know where here is, to be honest with you. But, last thing I remember is just falling from the sky. That's about it. Interesting. Are you a threat to, well, the kingdom? I mean, if I was a threat, why would I tell you I was a threat? Guys, you guys are not good at this. Have you ever interrogated anybody? They begin to get frustrated with Izuku, and Izuku just explains that he comes from, well, hero work, where interrogating is part of the job, and he's seen multiple people do it, and that interrogating like this definitely won't work. But then Izuku just explains what's going on. More or less just explains that he's a hero and keeps everything to a limit. And they say that their heroes were already fulfilled. Why would he be here? And he's confused by the idea of heroes, and then even asks about that one guy that he saw when he, well, kind of fell through the roof. And they say that that is, well, the devil of the shield, the most horrible hero that they summoned. And Izuku begins to think that, well, maybe that's a little overboard. And, well, he hasn't really known the guy very long and doesn't know him at all, but he doesn't seem that bad. But with all that said and done, Izuku is eventually let free, luckily, but they said that he basically shouldn't be making any trouble, or next time they're not going to let him out. And in Izuku's head, he thinks that he didn't do anything in the first place, but whatever. So he begins leaving, and he realizes that for some reason, he feels different. It seems like his body is built differently, or maybe he has something like some odd video game-esque type of technology, and he opens something. He opens this weird panel that begins showing him his stats, and it says that he's only level 1, but his stats are relatively average, you could say. And he seems to be able to activate his quirks and when he activates One For All, it gives him a boost in his stats. Izuku is still kinda confused, but he kind of understands what's going on in a way. He realizes that obviously he was sent to this world, and it seems that the other world he was sent to initially, in the very first time, well, was real. And then he was sent to, well, the world with all those weird demons, and that was real. And now he's here. He begins to actually kind of get frustrated, wanting to just go back to his world, but he realizes that he needs to just maybe struggle through these worlds, and maybe he'll be able to get back. But that's all he really can think of at the time, and he wanders off into the forest, finding little small monsters here and there, these tiny orange balloon monsters, these killer rabbits and stuff like that, and he easily defeats them and actually has to kill them, which is odd to Izuku. But Izuku actually realizes that, well, this needs to be done if, well, these monsters are going to attack him. It's not like he's attacking a human being and, well, he has to hold back his power. But even with this said, Izuku still wants to, well, know about this guy, this Naofumi guy, or the shield hero. Supposedly, well, this Naofumi person actually isn't very good. And, well, Izuku decides that he's going to take it upon himself to meet with him and, well, try to speak with him. So that's what Izuku decides to do. He begins to track down where the shield hero is going through basically asking people, but unfortunately he has to conform to the idea that this shield hero guy is horrible, eventually learning that, well, supposedly he's actually raped somebody or forced himself upon somebody, and that's why he's deemed so evil. But on top of that, it seems like this hatred runs a lot deeper. And he's seen this from villains that have hated heroes so deeply to the fact that they'd never let go of that hatred. And this isn't, well, necessarily new to him. He's known this hatred before, but that's not the point. He doesn't know if any of it is real, and he himself knows that he never should judge a book by its cover. So he continues his search for this person, and he goes, honestly, everywhere, well, Naofumi goes. He goes to check out this, well, village that supposedly had a monstrous plant, but it seems that the shield hero saved it. Izuku continues on and even finds this diseased village, or at least formerly diseased village, from this giant dragon, but it seems that the shield hero even saved that as well. The villagers do say that he has, well, some rough attitude around the edges, but he's a good person and they can tell, and that all these rumors that they've heard of him are just completely false. So Izuku continues on and asks where, well, they believe he went, and he continues to try and track them down. Eventually he stumbles across them, but that's during, well, a very odd argument back at Melremark. It seems like, well, another hero is currently confronting Naofumi, and Izuku just waits back and continues to watch on. It seems like this person by the name of Motoyasu attacks Naofumi after learning about Philo, another slave of some sorts that Naofumi has, and Izuku just continues to watch, and Naofumi just dodges and blocks the best he possibly can until Motoyasu is gonna strike him once again, but he's wrapped around in some black tendrils and is thrown to the side of a building, and Izuku is standing there while staring at him. You know, you shouldn't just attack somebody like that. Motoyasu gets up and Mind says that they should attack him as well, that he must be associated with him, but Motoyasu can't hit Izuku. Izuku's been mildly training in this world, but he does have really good control over One For All and his other quirks, so it's as if he can modify his abilities in this world. And yes, he did catch Motoyasu off guard, so he may not be as strong as Motoyasu, but in terms of technique, he can far keep up. And Raftalia and Philo are confused at who this person is, and so is Melty. Melty approaches and says that she orders on basically the idea that she is royalty, that they stop immediately. And she begins to explain to them that she is the queen, or the next queen in line, or the second princess, and that mine is basically out of that running because of her toxic personality. But now Fumi immediately says that she cannot be trusted, that she lied this whole time, and that he does not trust the royal family. And he basically says that he doesn't want to see her around ever again. And Izuku is just standing there watching this, and now Fumi looks at him. And for you, don't think since you helped me here that I'm in some favor to you. I don't really care about no favors, Mr. Shield Hero, correct? I actually don't care about it at all. But you were one of the people I saw when I fell through that roof, when I came from another world. So I'm curious about you. And I'll admit, I've been following you around to see what, well, you're all about, and I've heard good things. And I respect a fellow hero, even if I'm not technically a hero in this world. Now Fumi is shocked by this, but can't necessarily trust Izuku, feels that he could be lying to him as well, but Izuku just says that it's his choice if he wants to, well, trust him or not. Now Fumi then says that they have things to do, so he heads off to get the class upgrades for Raphtalia and Philo, in which he's not able to do, obviously, just like in normal, but now Fumi is trying his best to handle things before the next wave. Izuku actually approaches Melty and begins asking her about everything going on, and she fills him in, but then questions who he is, and he's surprised she hasn't heard about him. The kid that literally fell through the ceiling of a castle, you would think everybody would know, and she says that she had no clue. Well, Izuku just explains that, well, he's a hero in another world, but not in a world anything like this. But there might be a reason why he was sent here. Maybe they're lacking something. Maybe they needed help in some way, but he's not so sure. After some time passes, Izuku actually finds Naofumi once again, and Naofumi questions why he's still following him, and Izuku just says that he doesn't know anybody else, and he just wants to see this so-called villain. And Izuku begins to talk. You don't seem like a villain to me. In my world, well, villains wear some very outlandish things. I've fought a lot of them. And when I mean a lot, I mean a lot. A lot of very, very tough villains. Villains that would kill thousands for their own, well, ideas. Anything, really. They'd kill for everything. I've met a hero killer. I've met the leader of, well, the League of Villains. And I've met people that, well, lead an entire gang. You are no villain, Mr. Naofumi. It's interesting that they think you are. Now, I would like to help you, but I assume you don't trust me very much. But I'd like to just tag along. I don't need to be part of your so-called party by any means, and if I step out of line, the girl there can obviously take that sword and stab me in the chest. Naofumi says that he can tag along, but to not do anything dumb. Izuku says that he'll do anything that needs to be done based on, well, Naofumi's judgment. Naofumi nods and tells Raphtalia to keep an eye on him, and Izuku actually figured out that this would probably be the best way of getting him to trust him. It's not like Izuku's trying to do anything underhanded, but it is a good way of making sure that the shield hero is, well, not completely on the other side of the fence. So he goes with him all the way to see these refugees. It seems that Itsuki, the bow hero, actually more or less caused a revolution, or revolution in quotes, and it caused a giant famine. So they begin to feed, well, these refugees the best they possibly can and help them in any way possible, in which Izuku helps with like a small rebuild of their tiny village. But this then leads to them returning for the next wave, and Raphtalia actually explains to Izuku exactly what the waves are, and Izuku begins to understand, and he begins to think that maybe he came from a wave. but that wouldn't make sense. When he came was far after the wave, at least a day or so. So it wouldn't really make sense that an aftershock or something like that would cause him to come here, but nobody really knows for sure. And this then leads to obviously now Fumi and the group meeting actually Ren and Itsuki, who accuse him of stealing their rewards, but now Fumi says that, well, they didn't even do their jobs, that Itsuki basically caused a revolution and only just took out one government and put in another tyrannical ruler to basically start it once again, making this whole old corruption thing basically the same thing. And then Ren, on the other hand, slayed this dragon but didn't get rid of the corpse, which caused a giant plague disease, and it caused, well, Raphtalia's wounds. Ren and Itsuki decide to believe him, at least sort of. Ren mostly, other than Itsuki, sort of questioning what's happening, but that's beyond the point. Now Fumi and his party then leave with Izuku, and they're 24 hours away from the wave beginning, so they visit Erhard. And now Fumi explains that Izuku needs some actual armor, not that crusty and horrible clothing he's wearing. He looks to see what he's wearing, and he sees that he's actually wearing what he was initially when he left his world. And he's confused. Wouldn't he be wearing the clothing he wore when he was, well, in that world filled with demons? What's happening? But he doesn't necessarily question it. He just accepts the fact that he still has the memorable items from obviously Gran Torino and All Might, and he explains to Naofumi that this clothing is very sentimental to him, so he won't need to, well, upgrade his armor, and frankly there's no reason to spend any money on him. Naofumi nods and says that he likes him more and more, especially not having to spend money on him, and Izuku says that if, well, they need money, he could always do, well, missions for him and get money that way as well. He is a hero after all. And now Fumi questions this. A hero. What exactly do you even mean by that? In my world, Mr. Shield Hero, we basically have a hero society. We're all, well, born with a quirk, at least mostly, which is kind of like a superpower you could think of. Kind of like how you all have these weapons, that they're this power that you are bestowed with. And frankly, I'm not going to get into details with my long story, but I was born quirkless without a superpower, and one of the strongest heroes on our planet, or in our country, gave me his superpower. And now I'm here. I mean, there's a lot of things in between that, but frankly, it isn't too important. Now Fumi agrees that it's just a waste of time to explain any further, so they make sure that everything's set for the next wave, and 24 hours then passes. Once the wave begins, the wave obviously is just like normal with monsters and everything like that. And now Fumi and his party are basically able to defeat the monsters with relative ease. And during this time, Naofumi actually decides to add Izuku into the party just temporarily for this exact moment, just so he can monitor if Izuku is okay or not. And Izuku explains that he'll be just fine, but he appreciates that he's trusting him just a smidge more. After some more fighting, Naofumi begins to worry about the other heroes' progress because it seems like nothing is, well, finishing up. And they all move on to see that the other heroes' parties are haphazardly attacking a Dutchman. But Naofumi explains that they have no attention span at all, and that there's a hidden boss that needs to be exposed, in which Raptalia does instantly, exposing the massive Soul Eater. Immediately, the Soul Eater begins to, well, crash down and strike them, and Naofumi is about to basically resort to the Curse Shield. But before this could occur, well, Izuku comes in, wrapping Black Whip around the giant monster, slamming it to the ground, but the monster's not defeated by any means. And Izuku explains that whatever he's about to use, he can tell is a trump card. So let's try to avoid using it the best, well, they possibly can, because it's pretty blatantly obvious that it's about to have a toll on him. And Naofumi doesn't want to admit it, but the kid is right. So they try their best to fight off this monster without using his so-called trump card, which they're able to do more or less with the help of Izuku. Izuku using at least 50% of One For All is pretty strong, especially with that slight bit of training that he did in this world, because, well, now he's outputting even more power, so together as a whole they're able to actually defeat the Soul Eater with a good amount of struggle, but defeat it without actually using the curse shield, at least for now. But that won't be, well, the only thing that they'll have to deal with. After killing it, something terrible begins to occur. A second Soul Eater begins to appear. But as this occurs, to their surprise, another person appears as well, killing the Soul Eater immediately and floating down toward them. A woman in a black kimono wielding two twin-bladed war fans by the name of Glass. Glass immediately defeats practically everybody, and Naofumi is the only one that even stands a chance and even forces himself into many different shields, including his rage shield. This doesn't really work in his favor by any means though, and even Izuku cannot keep up with this person. Glass is just outclassing them by every stretch of the imagination. But they try their best to just dip and dodge, and Izuku is able to stay out of harm's way using danger sense. But this person, this attacker, has some insane power, and Izuku can't believe it. He realizes that this world is different. He can't just rely on his quirks. He's gonna need to train like crazy to keep up with these people, and that little bit of training he did before is nowhere near enough. If he just focused and just trained all the way until this wave, he could have defeated these people easily. Well, in theory maybe, but that doesn't matter now. They basically try to avoid Glass the best they possibly can, blocking and parrying and just playing keep away more or less, and luckily it ends in a stalemate. After the battle, Glass gets pulled into the wave, but promises that she will be back. Naofumi is astounded by this and ponders the wave's time limit, that it must have something to do with her getting pulled away, and that there might be more people to come. Eventually he's summoned back to the castle, and the king demands him to reveal the secret behind the abilities he was showing to protect everyone else, aka the rage shield and the special shields he was showing. But Naofumi demands that the king take a knee and kneel before him and beg. Enraged, this king says that if Naofumi doesn't want to talk, he'll just, well, do anything he wants to, well, his little party. Naofumi, though, not having it, threatens him with a worse outcome if he should try at all. Naofumi begins to walk out, and the king tries to stop him, but there is no stopping Naofumi. While walking out, a woman, though, covertly warns Naofumi about the church conspiring against him, giving him a small little, well, it seems like a knick-knack in a way, but it just shows, well, the Church of the Three Heroes emblem. And Naofumi shakes this off and goes to ask another question, but the woman is gone once again. And he realizes the way that she, well, spoke. A very dated manner of speech, and she must be some sort of royalty, or maybe some sort of help in terms of, well, who helps royalty. Maybe a listener, a follower, an assassin for the queen, he doesn't know. Could be for the king, could be for the queen, it could be anything. But with that in mind, Naofumi goes to walk out, and Izuku is basically leaning on the wall waiting. So what was that about? It's really none of your business. Yeah, you're right. I'm stepping boundaries. I apologize. So, the real question is, what's next? Who says you're gonna be part of it? I mean, frankly, I don't mean to, well, put it in your face, but you kinda need me. You need the help. These other people aren't listening. And, well, frankly, that king doesn't like you very much. So, if you want, we can work together. I need some training anyways. It will benefit me, you could say. I'm pretty strong already, and you yourself can check my level. Now imagine if I was the level of your, well, other two friends. Okay. We'll do a little trial run, how about that? Hey, a trial run is what I'll take. How about it? Now Fumi nods and says that he'll be adding him to the team for now, but if he disappoints, he'll be let go just like that. And well, Izuku is fine with this. He says that he wants to, well, be with a real hero, it seems, because the others have, well, some odd tendencies. Now Fumi rolls his eyes and tells him to stop buttering him up, but Izuku says that he totally wasn't doing that. They both then head out, and now Fumi, Raphtalia, Philo, and Izuku head to Shield Frieden to get their class upgrades. But during this, and actually not too far outside the kingdom, Melty stops them and tries to convince, well, now Fumi to basically apologize or reconcile with her father. But out of nowhere, Izuku steps in front of Melty in between both the guards and her. She asks what's going on and why is he doing that. Stay behind me. You are a princess, correct? Someone might be out for your head. At least that's what it seems like. And everybody's confused for a second, and now Fumi realizes what he's talking about. Well, the knights begin trying to attack Melty, trying to kill her, and it seems that whatever Izuku has in terms of his power, he can sense it. And Izuku immediately takes all of them down, forcing them all to retreat. Now Fumi slightly smirks and begins to think that maybe this kid is a good addition, and he turns to Melty. It seems like you're a hot commodity. You gotta be careful. Very careful. I think we should take her along. I mean, of course, if that's, well, in your playbook, boss. Now Fumi scoffs at this and tells him not to call him boss. They have a plan, and bringing her along won't affect it. Melty asks what's going on, and now Fumi says that it seems like someone is trying to assassinate her. Melty, the princess that is soon to be queen when her mother passes along, is trying to be assassinated. Who's trying to assassinate her? Well, Izuku and now Fumi have their suspicions, but they're not 100% sure. But their normal plans go just normal in line. Izuku tags along, now part of now Fumi's party. Now Fumi begins to take them to Shield Frieden. But that will not go all according to plan. They're going to be confronted by the Royal Guard, mine, and the other heroes. They're confronted and they begin to, well, fight immediately. Izuku immediately gets out of there with Melty and floats all the way, more or less, to another mountain. And nobody can really keep up. Izuku may not be insanely powerful, but his abilities allow for really good movement. With a combination of Black Whip and Float, he's able to just scale across entire mountains with ease depending on the more or less stature of each mountain. So he's able to get out of there with Melty in an instant. Melty is confused by this, and he says that it's pretty obvious that Melty, her sister, is trying to kill her. She doesn't believe this, but later on, now Fumi will confirm this. Now Fumi, Raphtalia, and Philo begin fighting. They're fighting to get out of there, fighting to live, to survive. And eventually they're able to do just that. Melty wants to help, and Melty wants to try and reason with her sister, but even Izuku knows that this is a terrible idea. This will just cause for more pain, more hurting, and more, well, you could say, devastation. So Izuku keeps her there, and Izuku just mildly helps as now Fumi solves the issue himself, in which he does just that without Izuku exactly knowing what's happening. This then leads to them being approached by one of the shadows. After they escape, the shadow begins to say that the queen wants to speak with them. But now Fumi refuses, saying that they have a job they need to get done. They need very much so to get these class upgrades before the next wave, and that is the highest of priority. So that's what they try to end up doing, but unfortunately, with the blaze of flames behind them and the royal guard hunting them, Naofumi has no choice to listen to what the woman has said. The woman that told him to go meet the queen. So that's what he does. He travels with Melty, Izuku, Raphtalia, and Philo, and they meet up with some nobleman by the name of Van Richnot, who rules over a certain area close to where, obviously, the queen is. To let them rest, he allows them in, feeds them food, and is just a overall nice guy. Izuku recognizes this and thanks him for all the help. And, well, Richnot says that he doesn't really recognize Izuku. He seems kinda odd. Naofumi just chalks it up, basically saying that he's like him. He's from another world. And Izuku is even confused by this. Another world? So does that mean you want to go back too? Yes, I do. I mean, I don't want to deal with all of this. I feel like that's pretty blatantly obvious. But, Naofumi, you have met some good people, correct? Some people you care about. Naofumi looks around and shakes his head slightly, but even he knows that there is truth to these words. They're able to stay at night, but the morning they wake up, Naofumi sees Melty getting taken away by some short, evil guy by the name of Rabier. Izuku immediately says that they need to go after her, but Naofumi questions if this is a good idea. But eventually Naofumi decides to go rescue Melty and Richnot, eventually leading to Raphtalia seeing a place that she did not want to see when she arrived in this new kingdom. A place where demi-humans were enslaved, where she was enslaved, and this leads her to confront Rabier, who pitifully begs for mercy when Raphtalia begins beating him senseless, and before Rabier can actually fall off into the window, well, Izuku catches him with Black Whip and holds him still, tying him up, saying that if you let him go, only more problems will come. He needs to be in captivity as soon as possible. Naofumi nods and says that he agrees. A man like this can have a chance at surviving. Izuku says that's not exactly what he means, but if he does survive and does something even more terrible, that's just as bad. If they lock him up, then that will be a better solution. And Naofumi says that he knows that's what he meant, and that that's a good idea. So they make sure he's tied up and they begin taking him away to a place that maybe they can find more or less to put him away. During this time though, Raphtalia begins searching through her jail cells, the old place that she was locked up. Izuku is with Naofumi speaking of what they should exactly do with Rabier, and Raphtalia finds something, calling for Naofumi, and Izuku runs with him. Raphtalia has just found one of her childhood friends. This obviously would lead to the Rex Dragon not even showing up. Rabier is in complete captivity, but even with this said, the person that matters very importantly to this story would eventually still show up. The Filolial Queen, Vittoria. Vittoria shows up in front of them, saying that she wants to help and she needs to speak with Naofumi, the shield hero, and also this other person that showed up randomly. And Naofumi and Izuku go with her, and Izuku begins learning of everything, of the fact that these other heroes have tons of flaws that even Naofumi does himself, but Naofumi is the only one that's been truly helping, and that there are other countries that lack the help that needs to be done. And Izuku begins to think that if he was strong enough, maybe he could go to one of the other countries and help out. And Vittoria says this is a good idea, but unfortunately Izuku isn't strong enough. She realizes that he just arrived and he has really insane potential, but that is just not something that could happen just like this. And Vittoria says that all that matters now is that the heroes work together. And Naofumi believes that this is an impossible idea, that it's actually ridiculous to think about. And after some push and pull, and even Izuku chiming in, eventually Naofumi says he'll try. He'll try his best to reconcile with the other heroes. This then leads to the next morning. Victoria takes Melty hostage to coerce Naofumi to make up with the heroes, but obviously with Izuku there, this decision was already made. But this is for a test to see how strong Philo truly is. To test Philo begins to use anything she possibly can to lay one finger on Victoria, eventually showing Victoria enough. And this Filolial Queen, the true Filolial Queen, decides to make Philo her apprentice, or the upcoming successor to the Filolial Queen. With all that said and done, Naofumi's party then begins to head off once again. But not to Shield Frieden, the closest hero they can possibly find. And unfortunately, that hero is the spear hero, Motoyasu. Motoyasu is there waiting. Motoyasu spots Naofumi, accusing him of killing both Ren and Itsuki, and Izuku says that that is the most outlandish thing he's ever heard. He's been on the run from them to protect Melty because this dear old sister is trying to assassinate her. Melty begins to question Malty, asking why she would do such a thing, and Malty says she would never do that she would never do such a thing to hurt her dear sister, and that Naofumi must be controlling them with his horrible shield. And Izuku looks at them and is completely in shock at the fact of how stupid Motoyasu is, and he's never really seen this stupid of a mindset out of a person. And Izuku, who isn't insanely strong at this point and is limited, is worried that he won't be that useful in this battle. But he will be, as a more of a support type of hero here. And the gates begin to close. Everything begins to change around them, and an electric arena is made. Naofumi says he doesn't want to fight, that he wants to talk. He wants to talk about working together, that this needs to be, but the spear hero cuts him off and immediately attacks him. The fight rages on, well, all the way until Philo begins to sense something. Something big. Something really bad. Naofumi is told to unlock his dark shield and then cover them with the shield prison, and then he begins to spam his airstrike shields. Airstrike shield, second shield, and they wait. Everything is so eerie, and Mind begins to question what he thinks he's doing, and Izuku even snaps at her and tells her to be quiet, that he knows something's coming as well. His danger sense is going off like crazy, until it smashes into them and begins destroying each and every shield. Luckily though, they're able to survive. But at the top of the crater, at the top of the mountain, stands the Pope. The Pope looks down on them as pretentious as always, honestly commending Naofumi for surviving, in which he says that everybody here will die as well, and he will take over, you could say, the royal family. Another blast is sent their way. One after another, it seems like the Pope has this endless amount of power. But luckily, Ren and Itsuki, the ones that were presumed to be dead, are not. They're back, and they're here to help the best they possibly can. They begin to fight as a team after Naofumi tells them the flaws and errors in their ways, and they begin to head toward the Pope. The Pope, though, covers them in a magical cathedral and traps them within, leading to Naofumi, while using his rage shield, using the last bit of power he has, leading him to use blood sacrifice. Izuku feels useless in this. The fact that he can't help at all, he hasn't gotten time to train by any means, and he's far weaker than even Raphtalia and Philo at this point, especially with the fact that he has no good levels. Yes, he has One for All, and that definitely boosts his strength, but in this world, that's not just it. You need these levels. These levels are actual multipliers, and that's what he needs to do. He watches on as Naofumi destroys his body, but at the same time kills the Pope. Luckily, the Queen is there to recover Naofumi and help the rest of the team. The Queen even introduces herself to Izuku, Raphtalia, and Philo, and is interested in Izuku, asking where he came from, and he says that originally he's born in a world where there's quirks, other known, well, you could say superpowers. The Queen is surprised by this and asks if he has those superpowers, and he nods. And he shows all of them, but says that he lacks the proper leveling up. And she smiles, saying that he might want to tag along for the next meeting they have for the Four Heroes Council. Izuku is surprised to be offered this, but he graciously accepts it, and the Queen says that he doesn't need to be so proper around her, that it seems like he's saved her own daughter multiple times, and Melty seems very fond of him. Izuku nods and thanks for obviously being so gracious to him. 3 days of recovery passes, and luckily Naofumi is up and ready to go once again. And throughout these 3 days, Izuku has been just training anywhere he can find. He's asked the other, people around the castle where there'd be good places to train, and that's all he's been doing, leveling up the most he possibly can. And Philo and Raphtalia have been beside Naofumi the entire time. They even tell Naofumi that Izuku feels terrible that he wasn't able to help, that he lacked the power to even help when he should have had it. Naofumi acts like he doesn't care, but obviously he does to a certain extent. This eventually leads to Naofumi and his party going to the Dragon Hourglass. Izuku tags along, but he's obviously not at high enough level yet to even get a class upgrade, but luckily, Fitoria's blessing is upon them, and Raphtalia and Philo get massive boosts in their levels and obviously in their stats by doing this, but it does seem that they can't choose their own pathways, which is ultimately pretty bad, at least for Raphtalia and Philo, but the great boost in power is definitely a bonus. With all that said and done, Naofumi takes Izuku to the Four Heroes Council: Izuku, Ren, Itsuki, Naofumi, and Motoyasu. The other 3 heroes question why he's even there, and the Queen says that he needs to hear this just as well. Izuku has come from another world, and he is very similar to them, but his world works differently. He has more or less superpowers. They ask if that's the case that he should have been helpful, but he says that his superpowers work a little different here. Yes, they're present, but his level is so low that he can't exactly be helpful. The Queen then says that that is where she comes in. There is going to be a Kalmira Archipelago event, an XP grinding event, that you would get tons of more XP. Izuku's eyes grow wide hearing this and begins to think that this is a great time for him to level up. Eventually, Naofumi and the rest of the heroes share their experience gaining methods and everything they've learned, but the only thing is none of them can really agree on whose is the best or if any of them actually works properly, which kind of sucks, and Naofumi gets frustrated and decides to leave, saying that he'll see them at Kalmira. So Izuku leaves as well, and that's exactly what happens next. They head off to Kalmira, but during this time they meet a pair of travelers, Lark and Therese. Izuku's danger sense begins to go off faintly, but then stop immediately, and he's confused by this. Why is it going off? But these people, they seem so calm, rational, and timid. Well, not so much Lark, but at least to the point of Therese. He shakes it off by maybe it's just his quirk malfunctioning in a world like this, but he'll soon to find out that that's not exactly why it went off briefly. Later on, this leads to them XP grinding. And when I'm saying XP grinding, now Fumi's party XP grinds like crazy. Izuku gets stronger and stronger, and frankly, he quickly eclipses Raftalia and Philo. Maybe not in level, but in pure power. Izuku is extremely strong now. All of this grinding, even with Lark and Therese now with a co-op, has given them insane XP. Izuku's quirks, obviously with One For All, makes him exponentially more strong. So at a level of almost 40 now, if he uses One For All, he's insanely powerful. And this will come in handy. And the reason why is because when now Fumi's party decides to relax on the beach, Philo discovers an undersea temple. A temple that they find has a dragon hourglass. And what resides is that it's linked to Kalmira with 48 hours left. Now Fumi says that they're going to head back to the Queen right now to inform her of everything and get things planned and set up. Izuku then says that he'll stay here. He asks why, and Izuku explains that he needs to at least get to level 40 before this next wave occurs. If Glass, shows up again, he wants to be ready, and he wants to be able to face them 1 versus 1 if need be. Now Fumi slightly smirks and tells him to go train if that's what he thinks is best. So Izuku does just that. Over the next 48 hours or so, Izuku just fights monster after monster, creature after creature, eventually getting to level 40, luckily before the wave begins. He's ready. He's got a little bit of rest, nothing crazy, just a couple of hours of sleep is all he needs for a fight of this length. The waves don't necessarily last for a really long time, and he should be able to help just as much right now. So he waits for it to begin. And he's sitting on the ship as it does. Sea monster after sea monster begins to close in, and Izuku immediately jumps out, grabbing them out of the water, throwing them into the air so that the spear, bow, and other heroes can destroy them out of the sky. And Izuku is playing a way larger part in this battle, far more than what it was before. Even the other heroes are shocked. Now Fumi though isn't. He knows how strong Izuku could be if he trained in this world, and he obviously is showing that currently. He might even be stronger than now Fumi, at least without the curse series. But with all that said, the final boss then arrives, a giant sea creature. Immediately Izuku uses One For All at 80% and punches the creature so hard that it sends it almost to the bottom of the ocean, and he grabs it with Black Whip, throwing it into the sky and hoping that the bow hero can snipe it out, but the bow hero can't kill it. He's too weak. But the scythe hero, the one he didn't know had this insane power and he thought was a threat, comes out of nowhere, stabbing it, killing it. And they are standing on the creature, staring at Izuku and the other heroes. Izuku's danger sense begins to go off like crazy as the scythe hero charges at him. He dodges and kicks him in the stomach, and the scythe hero smirks, saying that he knew this kid was strong, but not this strong. But now this will be fun. The fight rages on, and it's pretty blatantly obvious. With Izuku, they have the upper hand. That's until Glass shows up, making it so that now Fumi is stranded. Now Fumi has to fight Glass on his own. So Izuku says that he'll take points, and Raftalia doesn't argue. His speed even outmatches hers currently, and Izuku says that if anybody's going to die, it's him. Don't let themselves get hurt. Izuku charges forward immediately at Lark and begins to fight with him, dodging his blade over and over and even wrapping his Black Whip around it, kicking him in the face. He throws Lark into the sky and then basically just jumps at him, spiking him back down as Raftalia slices at Lark. The fight is going their way. With the extra, support of Izuku, this fight is theirs. And as the waves begin to tremor, and as Glass begins to lose her battle, everybody seems to have begin retreating. Lark and Therese jump over, telling Glass that this is not the time. not the time to fight. Izuku scoffs at this and is blatantly frustrated at the fact that they're gonna get away even though they did such a horrible thing. They might be trying to save their own world, but saving their own world at the expense of someone else's is far from unforgivable. This is absolutely ridiculous. He watches on as they get sucked back into the wave, but then he begins to get a pull. He sees another portal above him and it begins sucking him in, and Rautalia and Philo try to grab him, pulling him back, and as they do this though, his glove begins to slip and he flies through the portal. Izuku Midoriya, just like that, is gone. No longer in that universe, he appears somewhere else. He looks around and he doesn't even know where he is. This entire world seems desolate, horrible, destroyed. What is going on?
I don't wanna waste what's left. And